Okay, are we ready? I can't tell. Well, it's 10:02, so I'm going to go ahead, assuming that everything is in order. And we have 9 people. Great. So for some reason, screen share doesn't work. So I'm just going to go ahead and give the presentation as though it were. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Shelley Bates, and I write under 5 different names. One of them is Adina Senft, and I hit the USA Today list under that name in last year, so that was a big accomplishment. I'm used to be an adjunct at Seton Hill. I taught there for 17 years, and now I'm working on a PhD, and I'm doing my dissertation defense in about 2 weeks. So, stress. I'm a professional copy editor, and my next release is in August. It's going to be Amish romance. So that's about me. So now let's talk about back cover copy. So whether you're trying to pursue traditional publishing or indie publishing, either way, you need to know how to write compelling back cover copy. If you're working with a publisher, this goes in your query letter in the second paragraph. And if you want a kind of a little article on making a query letter, writing up a query letter, it's on my website at shelleyadina.com under extras, I think. Your publisher may ask you to write your own copy, or they may send you something that's written by like a 12-year-old in the back office, and you'll want to rewrite it to more accurately reflect your story. So knowing how to write good copy comes in handy. And of course, if you're indie, the book description on all the retailers is what is going to be written by you and is what is going to compel your readers to pick up your book. So, how to hook a reader. Step 1 is, of course, your amazing cover. Step 2, in a store, the person would turn the book over and read the back cover copy, wouldn't they? So keep in mind that this is a marketing tool. This is something to grab them and hook them and make them buy your book. It is not a plot synopsis. I saw a back cover description on Amazon one time that had to be 2,000 words long. It told everything that happened in the story. Basically, the person had just copied their synopsis into the field. This is not what we do as professional writers. And also, do not ever begin with the words, "This is the story of," or "It all began with." Never do that. Marketing copy. And there's a way to get your reader's attention using certain structure and certain phrases. So, how to hook a reader, step 3, the reader opens to page 1, or else they click look inside, or else they just click buy with one click. That's the optimal result. So your back cover copy makes a promise. It's often written in present tense. It doesn't have to be. It should be written sort of in the same tone and voice as your book is. It can be in first person or third person, depending on how your book is written. But the important thing is that it needs to use active verbs, vivid images, and keywords. We're going to get back to keywords and how important they are in a little while. What you want to do is evoke emotion and use words that resonate with the readers of your genre. You also want to evoke the same tone as your book. For instance, Regency romance copy is not going to be the same as thriller copy or fantasy copy. You want to evoke the tone and the world of your book in your copy. It's not generic, is what we're saying here. You want to give a hint of the setting, and you want to end with a hook, because what do we want the reader to do? That next step, step 2. Step 3, buy the book. So, the important thing about back cover copy is the reader wants to read about people. Character is the important thing to show there. So in a series, The primary and secondary characters you've created have to capture the reader in book 1 and then compel the reader into book 2 and beyond. So on book 1's cover copy, we want to make your characters stand out in 3 or 4 sentences. Yes, that's a tall order. You want to make them appealing, intriguing, smart, and sympathetic, because nobody wants to spend 2 or 3 hours in the head of somebody who isn't, because they want to go on this adventure and they want to be with nice people. Well, okay, so you're writing horror, maybe not, but they want to be with someone they can look up to because they are becoming the hero of the story. So you want that hero to be somebody likable. So back cover copy has a structure. 3 things: the shout line at the top, the body, 2 or 3 paragraphs, and the hook, also known as the challenge or the story question. So we're going to go through all 3 of those things. So the shout line. In movies, this is called a tagline. In the UK, they call it a strap line. I don't know why. It is pithy, witty. It can employ double meanings or a twist. That's sort of the ideal, because what does it do? It engages the mind of your reader. The hard part is, can you encapsulate the plot or the theme of your book in 1 sentence? Yeah, your book is like 400 pages long. That's a tough one. So the most important thing is that it would contain the principal trope of your story. So what is that and why are we doing this? Well, when we're writing, like, say, for instance, romance, the tropes would be a reunion, a secret baby, a marriage of convenience. You want whatever that trope is to be what newspapers used to call above the fold, because in Amazon, you'll notice that there's just like maybe 4 lines and then there's the read more button. So you want to make sure that the reader is getting knows what they're getting and is getting what they want above the fold, so that they will click the read more. It's like a little fence that they have to jump mentally. So if they're looking for chocolate chip cookies and you're giving them oatmeal raisin, they're not going to click on the read more. But if the trope that they like happens to be above the fold in the shout line or maybe the first line of your book description, then they're going to click. So other tropes, small town mystery, country manor house mystery, that happens to be my chocolate chip cookie. I love a country house mystery. If you're in space, if it's a science fiction novel, space station, if it's a dystopian, where are we in the old world that the new world kind of looks like, that sort of thing. Those are the tropes that your reader is looking for. If it's a thriller, maybe it's a deal, maybe it's a pursuit, maybe it's a caper. We want the tropes above the fold so that your reader knows what they're getting. So here's some examples of shout lines. This is the one, I didn't even have to turn the book over or open to page 1. I just bought it on the shout line alone. Claire Randall is leading a double life. She has a husband in 1 century and a lover in another. That, of course, is Outlander by Diana Gabaldon. And that was an insta-buy for me. Gail Carriger's Poison or Protect. A sexy assassin, a Scottish spy, and 2 lobsters attend a Victorian house party. Well, if you read Gail Carriger, you know that the lobsters are in there for a reason, because her sort of madcap danger is right there in the shout line. Rebecca Roanhorse, Trail of Lightning. It's a little bit longer because the publisher wrote it, but I will buy anything this girl writes. While most of the world has drowned beneath the sudden rising waters of a climate apocalypse, keyword, Dinetah, formerly the Navajo reservation, has been reborn. The gods and heroes of legend walk the land, but so do monsters. Okay, that's a little bit long for a shout line. It's like mostly the first paragraph of her back cover copy, but we know the setting, we know the genre, we know the trope, and I'm in, mostly because I'll buy anything she writes. So normally, if this were a workshop and you guys were actually watching this slideshow, we would write your shout line. So Maybe you want to do that, maybe not. I do have a handout, and I'm going to figure out with Donna how to get it to you guys so you can actually work through this on your own when you want to write your next back cover copy. So now let's move on to the body copy. It's 2 paragraphs, maybe 3 at most, couple hundred words. Because remember, you've got a space this big and you've got a font size this big, and what's going to fit on the back of your cover? Probably not that 2,000 word synopsis. So you'll want to get the gist of your protagonists, their inner conflicts, and their external goals in there clearly and engagingly. You might want the inciting incident. Maybe that's what the copy ends with, is the inciting incident. The shape of your body copy, I'm a visual person, so I see things in shapes. It'll change depending on your main characters. So for romance, you have 2 protagonists, 2 paragraphs. If you're writing women's fiction, urban fantasy, mystery, the single protagonist of these books is going to be the focus. What is their internal conflict? What is their external conflict? And what is the thing that's going to trip them up when they're trying to solve their mystery or save the world? If you're doing an ensemble cast, for instance, reverse harem, like a werewolf pack, a boarding school, young adult, then the shape of your body copy will change, because you need to figure out whose story or is the story problem going to affect all of them, and how much of that are you going to put in your back cover copy. Ensemble casts are difficult, I won't lie. So the copy for dual protagonists, you've got 2 conflicts or interpersonal conflict between the 2 of them, and that can weigh as much as the story question. So for romance, you would have the first protagonist and the second protagonist, originally called hero and heroine, but not so much anymore. For a romantic suspense, you would have those 2 people plus a known threat. For a thriller or a dark fantasy, you might have 1 or 2 protagonists and an unknown threat. So that might even take its own paragraph. If you've got a buddy story or a road trip, you've got 2 protagonists and a quest. So the shape of your back cover copy is going to include those 2 people plus this thing that's going on in your story. So as an example, the first paragraph of the copy for Poison or Protect by Gail Carriger. Lady Prescia Valencia, the Morning Star, morning with a U, has 4 dead husbands and a nasty reputation. Fortunately, she looks fabulous in black. What society doesn't know is that all her husbands were marked for death by Prescia's employer. And Prescia has one final assignment. Well, I don't know about you, but Morning Star got me. Second paragraph. It was supposed to be easy, a house party with minimal bloodshed. Prescia hadn't anticipated Captain Gavin Ruthven. Massive, Scottish, quietly irresistible, and working for the enemy. So we have interpersonal conflict, conflicting goals, murder, assassination, and the lobsters. If you're a Carriger fan, this hits all your buttons. If you've got a single protagonist, urban fantasy, women's fiction, the character's inner life and the story question are going to take precedence in your back cover copy. Voice in women's fiction and urban fantasy in particular, voice is so important, and world building is so important. So make sure that you have those things that readers want, the voice and the world building, in your cover copy. The love interest in both cases is secondary. In women's fiction, it takes a backseat to the inner journey and her family. And in urban fantasy, of course, it takes a backseat to saving the protagonist's world. And in fact, any romantic journey is going to complicate saving the world. So if you have an ensemble cast, which many young adult books do, the story world takes on a bigger role, and the story problems will affect the whole cast in different ways depending on their personalities. But for book 1, you need to encapsulate somehow the character's inner conflict and personality, as well as the story problem or if it's a mystery, the case to solve. It's okay to focus on different combinations of characters in each book as the series develops, but to start off on book 1, keep it as simple as possible and don't try and cram the entire cast in there. There's usually in series, there's this arc over however many multiple books that is sort of a larger story question. Sometimes in my Magnificent Devices series, I call it the big bad because it develops over 12 books. But the romance develops over 8 books. So there's these things going on that you may or may not put in your back cover copy because you don't want to give away too much. And plus, when I started the series, I didn't know there even was a big bad. It was only supposed to be 1 book, and now it's 22. So there you go. There's certain other series, the romance can be brought in, like Vanetta Chapman writes a series of mysteries, and the Amish bishop is the sleuth. And the romance, it develops over 3 books, and it's right there in the back cover copy because that's what her demographic wants. They want the mystery and they want the romance. So she makes sure that both those things are in the cover copy. Those are her audience's chocolate chips. Box sets are a recent and unique problem because how do you write copy for a product that contains more than 1 book? So possible solutions would be to introduce the world and then just give short 1-sentence blurbs for each book, then a graceful wrap-up featuring the larger series question to act as the hook. If it's romance, if you're doing a romance series, say in a family and every brother gets their romance or whatever, you can focus on the anchor couple and then summarize the story questions for the other ones. Marie Force does that a lot in her box sets. So if it's a continuing or a long series like I'm writing, it gets more complicated because what do you leave out and what do you highlight as you're creating box sets, every 4 books? So the basic thing to remember is to avoid repetition of copy that's already been released on these previous sets. That's the most important thing to remember. The second most important thing to remember is the keywords. Even in a box set, you're going to want the keywords to appear clearly so that the Amazon algorithms know that they have a product. If a reader is searching on, I don't know, steampunk, you want to make sure that the words steam or steampunk are in the box set description, no matter how long it is, so that the algorithm knows it's got the right thing to present to its reader. So that's the back cover copy in the body. Now we have the back cover copy in the hook or the story question. Oh, I suppose I should stop a second and ask you all, are there any questions so far? You can write them in the chat because that's the only place I can see them, and I'll do my best to answer. So just let me know. I'll keep an eye on the chat box. Okay. So your story question and your hook. You may want to end on a point of tension or a question. It's very common. Will so-and-so get together at the end of this book? You might want to be a little more original than that. Focus on your story problem and create the hook from that. The characters' paragraphs are setting up the internal personal conflict, but the story question is the story conflict, and you may want to, romance is kind of a case by itself because the story question is, will they get together and fall in love? But for other books in other genres, the story question, the world, the threat is the hook. So you might want to end on this first moment of emotional jeopardy, which would be the internal conflict. You might want to end on the first sign of trouble, which is the external conflict. But whatever you choose, because you're the God in your little universe, you want the reader to open the book and turn to page 1. So whatever it takes to get that to happen, that's what would go in your copy. So in Gail Carriger's Poison or Protect, her hook is, in a battle of wits, Prussia may risk her own heart, a terrifying prospect as she never knew she had one. So we have an assassin who's falling in love with another assassin, plus, will either of them succeed in killing the person that the other one is trying to protect? We have to find out. And what is with the lobsters? How do they come in? I copy-edited that book and I couldn't wait to find out. So for my book, The Judge Wore Lamp Black, it's a steampunk mystery. So we have world building, we have the case, we have character, all in 3 paragraphs. So the final paragraph is, have they finally located their beloved father only to have him clapped in jail by the Royal Canadian Airborne Police? In a dizzying descent from society belles to social pariahs, Daisy and Freddie now have only themselves to rely on. And they have less than a week to force the killer into the light before their beloved father hangs for a crime he didn't commit. So what we have here is a ticking clock. There has been the payoff, this MacGuffin, their dad, that they've been chasing for 5 books. They finally find him, only to have him snatched away. So that's the chocolate chip that my particular reader is looking for. So I made sure that it was in the back cover copy as the hook. So we were talking earlier about keywords and algorithms. I have the first book in an Amish series just came out, and I had to make sure that the trope was in the shoutline. It's a reunion story. Secondary trope, cowboys. It's called The Amish Cowboy, set in Montana. So the cowboy and the reunion were in the shoutline. The first paragraph contained the setting, Old Order Amish, Ranch, Montana. The next paragraph, romance. So even though it was shoutline, here, first protagonist, second protagonist, those keywords needed to be in there because any Amish reader reader of Amish fiction that is looking for more Amish books is going to type Amish in the search box. And I want the algorithms to surface my book. If they particularly like reunion stories, that word needs to be in there. So the keywords make the algorithms happy, because along with the keyword box where you put all your keywords in, these ones just confirm that to the algorithm that it has found the right book to present to the reader. And if the reader then goes and clicks on that book, you move up in the rankings because the algorithm has done its job correctly. So keywords, who knew that they would be so important? So who knew that the ability to write back cover blurbs would become such a valuable skill? Some people have offered this for sale. You can get a blurb written by theblurbitch.com, theblurbqueen.com. Brian Cohen has a service that in his best page forward classes, he will write your blurb for you. And prices go as high as $300 a blurb. Who knew? Used to be only $35, but the indie industry has exploded, and so prices have gone up. But if you happen to be really good at this, it's kind of a nice little side gig writing blurbs. The person sends you their synopsis or their first 3 chapters or whatever, and you write the blurb from it. So to kind of wrap this up in steps, your front cover image and your back cover copy make a promise to the reader. The book fulfills that promise. So you want to make the copy as compelling as your book. And when the reader can trust you to keep the promise, they'll be back for more because they can have confidence in you as a writer, that you're not doing a bait and switch, and that their mind and their consciousness is in safe hands in your book because you have delivered on what they thought they were getting. Okay? So now I really want questions. Come on, you guys. I wonder if there's a way to get us all in this classroom together so we can see each other. Maybe not. This is new software to me, as you can tell. Questions, come on. We have 20 minutes for questions. Otherwise, we can just kind of sit down and write our own copy. Okay, Marie Wood wants to know what's the word count. So I wouldn't go more than about 300 words, because if you look at your standard back cover, here's Judge Warlamp Black. That's the space you've got. So shoutline up here, what's going to happen in this mystery, and that paragraph that I read down here about the jeopardy to their father. That's not a whole lot of room. And this is a standard trade size book, 5 1/4 by 8. So 300 words is probably going to be as much as you want to crowd on there. Maybe you want to have room for a cover quote from another author and your website maybe. So just think about the actual space that you've got. So Lori, Marie, what do you mean about are there requirements? That's not completely clear to me. Oh, part of the last question. Yep. Basically, the only requirement you have is clarity, marketability, and space. So you want to show the reader that their favorite chocolate chips are actually part of this package that you're offering them. So that's I would say that was a requirement. Okay, Susan Jensen says, what other things should be disclosed along with the blurb? For example, cliffhangers, content warnings, or anything to clarify the reader promise. Okay. Content warnings. If it's something like a rape on the page or something that could cause extreme discomfort in your reader, I would put it in a line at the bottom. Once you've got their attention, that's great. But if it's also something that's really going to cause hurt or harm, you probably want to do a content warning. Consider that carefully and run it by a couple of people. And maybe if you have a friend in a support group or something, run it by her or him, just to make sure that I wouldn't put the crisis on the back cover copy, just because it may not be something that triggers somebody else. But I think I kind of believe in content warnings, because if there's a book that shows cruelty to an animal or a bird on the page, I'm not going to buy it. So even though the story might sound intriguing, if that little nasty is in there, that's going to be a wall banger for me. So just my own personal opinion is I like to see it. There was one other thing. If the book has been previously published, you'd probably also want a line at the bottom. Previously published as title by publisher in year. Just so people who buy all your stuff know that, oh, gee, I've already got that one in my collection, and I'm not going to spend another $4.99 to get it again. Would you avoid descriptors like exciting, riveting, amazing? Yes, I would, because that is an opinion. That is not anything to do with the story. And what if the reader doesn't agree with you? What if the reader's like, oh, she said this was amazing and I am not amazed? So you have then just broken the promise that you've put on your back cover copy. And it's through no fault of the readers, but you stick to what's in the story. Allow your characters and the world that you've created to amaze them just in their being. It's like, yeah, we're not like Toyota saying that this is the best thing that ever was. We want to encourage the reader to think that through our copy, but not make false claims that that might not be true for everybody. Previously published book line should go on the back as part of the back cover copy. If you're doing paper copies, no, that goes on the copyright page. This one, your copyright page, it goes like down here, because you do want to be honest and say this has been previously published. But in a paper copy, it would go on the copyright page. In a digital book, you could just do the little line at the bottom of the description saying, just to be clear, you want to be honest, you want to make a promise that is honest. I thought I heard you say that it should be on the back. Of paper previously published. No, you don't need to put that on the back. Sorry. On the digital book description on Amazon, yeah, it should be at the bottom. What did I miss anything? Oh, cliffhangers. Well, you know, all my steampunk books kind of end on cliffhangers. No, I don't disclose it. Some people don't like them. But, you know, if you're reading action and adventure, hanging from cliffs is sort of part of the contract between the author and the reader. Is action and adventure, by definition, is kind of cliffhangery. So I do not disclose that there's cliffhangers because clearly this is a series. Clearly the character survives to go on to the next book. I don't think it's necessary. That you may get a little static in the reviews because some people just don't like them. And they feel that you're manipulating them into buying the next book to see what happens. And we're like, well, duh. So did the serials of the 1940s in movie theaters. Of course they rooked you in to come back the next week and see what happens. That's where the word cliffhanger comes from. Penelope, what's her name? The Perils of Penelope. She was always hanging from cliffs. But it's not something that you need to disclose in your copy, I don't think. More questions. Just think about people's emotions as they're reading your books. Like there's harm, and then there's like active harm from, you know, a trigger that maybe didn't get disclosed. And then there's just like, the natural suspense of reading a book and wanting to know what happens next. That's not harm. So yeah, I wouldn't disclose. Come on, you guys, we have lots of time. Do you want to actually get some practice at shoutlines and share your shoutlines? Because we have time to do that. Normally this class is 90 minutes and we're writing our copy as we go. What have we got? Should you speak of comps? Readers of Black will love this. Oh, no, because once again, you are making an assumption that they will love it. And if they don't love it, then you've broken your contract with the reader. So, and besides which, Amazon doesn't let you do that anymore. Used to be back in the, you know, the Wild West of 2012, that Amazon would let you say things like, readers of Bella Andre will love this family saga and this romance. But they don't, because Bella Andre may not like her name being used as advertising for somebody else's book, which may or may not be like her book. So that has now been discontinued. And unless you can prove that all the readers of this particular book you're referring to will love yours, I don't think it's worth the risk of disappointment. You want the reader to be so engaged and so loving your book that they don't care about the other one. Okay, Amy. Hi, Amy. Also assumes the reader knows the comp. Yes, exactly. Because all readers don't read all books in any given genre. And if you're saying, if you read such and such, you'll love this one. And I'm going, oh, I haven't read such and such. And so then you're back on your own 2 feet, aren't you? You don't have the support of that comp read. And that's where you should have been in the beginning, is attracting the reader on your book's own merits. Okay, how much about the first book should you add to the back cover copy of the second? Wow. So I have a 22 book series, and I do not refer to the adventures of the previous books in the new one. It's because people can come into a series at any point. They may pick up book 2 in a library sale. They may pick up book 17 just because they were bored and they thought it sounded interesting and then go back to read book 1. So how can you possibly bring material from previous books into that book? It's consider the space issue. So I would stick to, unless, well, no. If it, you know, like Kinsey Milhone, the Alphabet Mysteries, there was maybe just a little thread about Kinsey's past in the copy, or whatever the continuing arc that she was developing as a person over all those 25 books. That little bit is okay, but nothing about the previous cases. Or you might be tempted to say, after the success with the insurance fraud in book 1, and all the readers are going, "What? Come on, I didn't want to know about that." So yeah, I would stick to the copy of the book that's in hand. I've seen people also include long excerpts of the book itself under the blurb, and I hate that because I like to know page count before I buy, and I have to scroll through that to get there. Yeah, I kind of agree with you. Although there are a couple of little things that sometimes do help. If you you have your back cover copy, your 3 paragraphs, and then maybe some kind of star or divider. And then some authors say other books in this series in reading order, because readers care about reading order. And then they list the other books in the series in the book description for every book. So sometimes that's helpful. I mean, I'm probably going to do that for my Amish Cowboy series because it's only 6 books. And those particular readers like to know the reading order. And while you can read those books in any order, the overarching subplot about the mom may be kind of disjointed if the reader doesn't start with book 1. So that's also a possibility. But no, I would not do an excerpt from the story. It's pointless because you can do the look inside and go straight to chapter 1 anyhow. Yeah, it's redundant. And your space is at such a premium on your book page that you want to make the most of it. Okay, Samantha. Hi, Samantha. So does the shout line not necessarily need to give a lot of context for the situation, but instead present an exciting hook to get the reader to keep reading for that in the next paragraph? Basically, it's an attention grabber because remember I said above the fold, like before they have to click read more to actually get to the body copy, they've got the shout line and maybe 3 lines to read. And so in order to make sure that your reader is getting their chocolate chip, you want to pack as much meaning and wit into the shout line as you can to get their attention. And then they will click read more because they're like, ooh, not only is this my little cookie because of the tropes, but it's clever and I want to read more from this writer who can turn a phrase like that. Great idea about the other books in the series. That's info I'd want. Exactly. Yeah, I kind of like that too. And yeah, you can go into the front of the book and say, look, there's usually a other books in this series page, but if the person doesn't have the print copy in hand, all they've got is, well, Amazon now does your series carousel, but if the reader is not thinking that way, she might not click on that on the series link. And so there it is, right in front of her eyes and the reading order. There's nothing wrong with, I was bad-mouthing redundancy a little while ago, but there's nothing wrong with allowing your reader to find information that's helpful in more than one place. And, my demographic is older for the Amish books, so they may not know to click on the series link. But there it is. There's the books at the bottom. More questions. Does anybody have a shout line for their current work in progress that they'd like to share with us? I love shout lines. They're like a little art form all in themselves. What did I have for this one? Oh, I didn't have one. Oh, here's the shout line for the Judge Warlamp Black steampunk mystery. The family circle is all Daisy and Freddie have longed for, but sometimes a circle can close and constrict and kill. This book is about family and murders in families. Somebody else have one? Run it by us. Just type it into the chat box. Or more questions. I'm good with that too. We have lots of time, 10 minutes. Well, that's kind of a Harlequin phrase, in movies they call them taglines, because there was a movement among authors a couple of years ago. You have to have a tagline for your website. You have to have a tagline for your book. What's your tagline? And so everybody was, trying to come up with taglines for their website. And it's like, well, do you need to put your effort there, or do you need to put your effort into getting a reader to buy your book so then they come to your website? I don't know. Mine's short and sweet. Stories with Spirit. That goes on my website. But taglines for books, shoutlines. Since Amazon didn't used to have the read more, your book description was shown in its full glory as soon as the person opened the book page. But now not, so that they could put more carousels of also bots down below. So your shoutline has to work harder than it might have otherwise. You thought you were dead. That's a good one. So what is the reason you did that in second person, Marie? Is the whole book in second person? Okay, so that's an interesting way to bring it across, but it does create action, doesn't it? That's okay, not to worry. She's trying to type fast. Anybody else have a shout line to run past us? Just for our enjoyment and possibly even learning. Marie says, I wanted to immerse the reader in my main character's struggle. There you go. And so what I was saying before about the reader riding around in the head of the character, it's right there in the shout line, isn't it? Oh, come on. There's 9 people in this room. 10 people. Go for it. You can make up a shout line for your current work in progress, or you can use one you've already posted. Or ask me another question. Anything about the business, doesn't have to be about back cover copy. I'll tell you the truth. Okay, Marie says, second line, waking up and looking around you, you realize that everything you learned about the afterlife was a fantasy. Ooh. So those 2 lines are going to be above the fold on the Amazon book description, and that would be enough to get a person to hit read more. Cool. Nicely done. All right, you 10 people. Let's have something. Yeah, Tim is right. This is really different to have the responses be in the chat box instead of like the normal give and take of a Zoom conversation. And now I know what to call this. Oh, a shout line, yeah. No questions? Well, I wish I'm gonna try and find out from Donna where to put my handout, because anyone in this class who's ever taken classes with me, I'm all about the handouts. There must be a way to like post things on the somewhere in the website that's running the conference. I am requesting access, says waiting for approval. Oh, yeah, there you are. Approve somewhere on your screen. Okay. Aha.
Hi.
Hey, there you are. Okay, let us have it.
I thought it would be easier to just read my next one because it's just, I didn't know that, I just never thought about it being one line. I will say this, these are difficult to write. Like it is not God, it's a whole different style of writing
Yeah, it's
because I
marketing
don't like the
copy.
marketing aspect of writing at all, right? So
Well, it's a learned skill, believe me.
yeah. So I have a novella that just came out. The one I just posted was one from my novel from last fall. But
Hmm.
this novella, I'm going to call it a shoutline because I think that's fun. Working from home has its perks. Being able to attend meetings in your pajamas, chief among them. That was the first line. The second would be, but when the house you occupy all day long is empty, when the only voice you hear after work comes through the television speakers, it can get a little old. And then there's not much left. It was a really short section for my back cover copy here because the next few lines are, unless you like it that way. And Chris did like it that way until the whispering started.
The only thing I would change is to shorten up the thing about the TV. When the only voices you hear are from the TV.
Okay.
Because it's keeping the reader from the actual point, which is the whispering.
True. Okay. Okay. I thought it was
Yeah.
too quick. I felt like I was sort of just,
Well,
I didn't want
you
someone to
could,
think I was just kind of throwing anything up there and not giving them any meat, but I see your point as well.
I would add a little bit more about the character's personality. Something that maybe something in her personality that is either making the whispering easier to hear or is going to trip her up somehow as she deals with what's whispering.
Okay.
Just a little bit more about her, because remember, it's people that draw readers in. People like themselves. This could be me.
Okay.
Oh,
Neat.
Ellen says the handouts are on Google Docs. Okay, good. Then posted the link in chat. Okay. Thanks, Samantha. Good. That's good. Good to know. All righty. Now,
Question. Since people are being
sure.
quiet, I'll ask another one.
Absolutely. That's it. Probably 10 people wanted to know the answer too.
Yeah, I mean, I've been asking questions in the chat that I was thinking that maybe all of us or anyone who comes back to watch the video would benefit from. But let me ask you this. What do you think about I don't know what to call it. I've been thinking of it like it's a summary line at the end of that back cover copy. I have one for my vampire novel and I'll read it real quick. It says, "The Promise Keeper is a story of love, despair, murder, and deceit. It is also a vampire tale like no other." And I've loved it. It's done well. People keep talking about how that's the thing that pulled them in to reading that book, but I don't know why. I don't know why. I don't know what that would mean.
So you're undecided whether to take that line off the copy or
No, I'm
not?
leaving it. I just wanted to know what it's on the book. It's printed. I'm not messing with it, but I just
Oh, okay.
wondered what your thoughts were about that sort of summary because I don't do it. All three of these books have different styles of writing on the back cover copy. And so I'm just trying to figure out, I'm writing a new one, which was, that's why I was asking the question about what do you think you should put on the second book of a series or the third book of a series or things like that. Because
I
that's
do
what I
put
mean.
book two of whatever series. I do put that up there.
Yeah, I have that in the title just because I don't want there to be any confusion. But
Right.
I wondered what you thought about this sort of summary because I'm writing something fresh. So I don't know what to do with the next one.
Oddly enough, I have seen that with increasing frequency, like just in the last 2 months.
Huh.
Is there somebody out there teaching people to do this, or are people reading like the top 100 bestsellers in their genre and going, oh, you've got this, I should put this in too, and then it just replicates?
I will tell you that I didn't do either one of those. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's up to the author. I would be quite cautious about a story like no other, because that can be contested by your reader as part of the promise. So
True.
just be cautious if you're selling like hotcakes and nobody cares, disregard. But it's kind of like, this car is the best one you will ever buy, and then it breaks, and then the buyer is like, you lied to me. So
Okay, good point. Good point. Okay. I think I might be able to keep that sort of in this context for that story. It's the vampire is of African descent and
Mm.
there's a demon, and then they go from like 300 years basically across continents and whatever to get to this final spot in New York. So I might actually be okay saying it's a vampire tale like no other, because that
You
one is
could
kind of
be.
unique.
But as Own Voices gets going and more, we see more material in the market 20 years from now, when you're like the pioneer in the genre, you may need to change your copy.
True. Or someone can't say it because I've already said it. I don't know. Who knows?
Exactly.
I don't know. It seems like it. I don't know. These are horrible to write for
I know.
someone. I mean, like you mentioned, the book is however many hundred pages, and I've got to sort of condense something that's catchy and not snippy, but catchy and like just eye-catching, if you will, to draw someone in. That is so hard. I just
It
wanted to
is.
say that.
And that's kind of why I'm here, is because I had a horrible struggle with, I mean, I worked in marketing in corporate, but it's not the same when you've got the book of your heart and you're trying to condense it into something that's going to attract people,
Yeah.
when you can't put the novel in front of them right away. So yeah, it's a learned skill,
Hmm.
and that's why I'm here.
I appreciate it. Thank you for the feedback on those.
Hey, you're welcome.
I'm gonna
Okay.
sort through this next one. That's the thing that this is my first series,
Mm,
so I'm
okay.
concerned because I have literally no idea what to put on the back of this book. I mean, I have a great idea for what I think it would be standalone, but I don't want to. I want to make sure that people realize it's tied to the first book, and so that they're compelled, if they they can come into the book not having read the first book, but I
Right.
want them to want to read the first book so that they know what's happening in book 2 as well. I don't know.
So that's why at the bottom of your copy, you'd be well advised to put, other books in this series, and just put it right out there. Put it in like page 3 of your print copy, other books in this series. And
Okay.
then maybe you wouldn't have to deal with the mechanics of making a reader understand there's other ones, because the readers picked up this one wanting to know if her chocolate chips are in it. So that's the immediacy of that need, is what you need to satisfy.
Okay, note to self, reach out to publisher, tell her, let's put this at the bottom.
Well, usually publishers are pretty good about the, also in this series page, because it's to their benefit to get people into
Absolutely.
that funnel. Yeah, absolutely. So it's just,
Thank you.
it's
Thank you.
an
I appreciate that.
no problem. So everyone, I will do as Ellen and Samantha have said, and put the handout in the Google Doc thing, and then post the location of it in the chat. So thank you so much for coming. This has been fun, even though it was kind of weird not being able to show my presentation. But it's good to see you, and have fun for the rest of the conference. You're very welcome.